Alright, I've returned, and we shall try our hand at New Londo again. These darn ghosts have been getting on my nerves. But it's all for a good cause. And so the good cause is that I'm gonna power up. Because we're about to face some pretty strong challenges, so I just want that little bit of extra power, you know? I don't remember what I was talking about before I went to the bathroom. Talking about Yolando and the ghosts and Ingward and how I want to do something with Ingward, but you have to kill him to do it. I was talking about the story. Oh, I was talking about NPC stories. Yeah, NPC stories, you only get to see them if you interact with the NPCs. And you'll only interact with the NPCs if you care about them. And the stories are only going to impact you if you care about them. So it's win-win-win. And what I like too is that there's different ways NPC stories can go. And it's very nebulous sometimes. At least if if you're not very familiar with the game, it's very nebulous sometimes what the right thing is and what the wrong thing is, or if there's such a thing as a right and a wrong thing. It's very morally gray a lot of the time, and it's also tends to be very, damned if you do, damned if you don't. And there's an example I want to talk about later, but I'd rather let it happen naturally, so to speak, and then I'll talk about it. But there's a lot of stuff like that where I think, and this kind of goes back to also the fact that like the Dark Souls world, it still has a lot of like dignity to it. It's, even though it's dead and dying and it's decrepit and everything's like losing its beauty, things may have lost their beauty, but they haven't lost their dignity, so to speak. Like I gave an example in an earlier video where I talked about the Baldur Knights and how you could think that in life these knights were probably, they had beautiful armor and they were these skilled knights, because you can clearly tell they're skilled. Like they use like high dexterity weapons, their shields are very impressive looking, their armor has like a flowing cape, and they're part of like Baldur Knight Ricard's, Baldur Prince Ricard's like squad, and they fight with a lot of grace. So it makes you think like, oh, these were these beautiful regal knights, and now they're these these emaciated corpse looking guys with broken armor, but they still fight beautifully. They're still skilled knights, and you could say like that's their muscle memory, so to speak, that despite being these mindless hollows, that they still have the muscle memory to fight like proper knights. So they still have their dignity to them. They still have their skills. And there's a lot about Dark Souls that's like that, where it's very dignified, very beautiful, very that lost beauty is what makes it sad. It's not and tragic. It's not necessarily that something is scary for the sake of being scary. What's scary is more the implications of what was lost. And I really like that about even Yolando has this, where Yolando clearly probably used to be this great village or city, because the architecture is pretty impressive, and it looks like it's pretty big, pretty sprawling, and the fact that it's called New Londo means that it's named after Anor Londo, and Anor Londo is a city of the gods. So the fact that it's like the second Anor Londo is a big deal. It means that there's this town was at one point like this great place. So the fact that now it's this, oh my god, my camera kind of spun on its own. But yeah, the fact that this town is now a ghost town filled with corpses and water, and it's flooded, and there's like Ingward who watches over it to make sure that the evil doesn't come from the evil that was sealed away doesn't come back. It paints a very grim picture, but it paints a very sad picture more than anything. It's very all these innocents that died because of the darkness that was coming from New Londo. It doesn't feel like just edgy for edgy's sake. There's, once again, like I always said, there's beauty to it. I don't know why my camera was acting so weird. I think it's because the camera tries to readjust itself when you're in tight corridors because it doesn't want to like that. You know, instead of doing the thing where you see through the wall and it stays far away, it kind of sticks to the wall. I know it helps with. It's a bit weird, like, to do cameras like this. I've never really liked that. I prefer when cameras go through walls and it's really artificial and everything, and like in God Hand.
Oh, hello there. You've been a stranger these days. Why? What spectacular pyromancy? Tell me about it. I have never seen anything like it.
So, this is what I mean when I say, like, it's kind of, sometimes it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. And I really like this moment because Laurentius has been nothing but a good friend to you. He's shared a part of himself with you, a very intimate act. He's been teaching you pyromancy. And now he's like, oh my god, you have such an amazing pyromancy, which I'm pretty sure he's talking about the chaos fireball that I have. I got from the fair lady. Oh my god, that's amazing. Can you tell me where you got that? So, by all means, you're gonna tell him yes, you're gonna tell him how. You know, he wants to further his knowledge, he's impressed, you know, why not?
Why, yes, of course. Thank you for sharing. I'm still an able pyromancer. I shall locate her myself. I'm in your debt, once again. My teacher, whom I imagine still resides in the Great Swamp, had a funny way of putting it. He said that pyromancy is the ultimate fantasy. We are born in the dark and warmed by fire, but this fire we cannot touch. Those whose fascination with fire persists learn to hold it in their own hand. He rather had a way with words, the old withering frog. In this land, pyromancers earn a certain respect. The Witch of Izalith, one of the legendary lords, is the godmother of pyromancy. So the day I became undead, I was ecstatic. I felt as if I'd been chosen to attune myself to the ancient arts. Of course, it wasn't all that romantic in the end. The pyromancer's flame.
We better exhaust his dialogue because, well, he doesn't have...
Don't you dare go, Otto.
He doesn't have anything else to sell to us, and he said his last things to us, I think. So basically, yeah, he asks you where you found that. You tell him, well, yeah, I found it in Blighttown. So now he's gonna go to Blighttown to try to find what you have, which is those amazing chaos pyromancies. And we'll see what happens to him. But you know, like any Dark Souls quest, I don't think it's gonna end very nicely for him. There's one of the situations, you know, damned if you do, damned if you don't. He's been nothing but nice to you, so why would you decline his request? With meta information, you know that if you decline his request, he'll live, and if you accept his request, he'll die. He'll go hollow and die. I decided to accept his request because I like him, and I want to give him the information he asks of me, even if I know it's gonna lead to his death. Because if I say no to him, he'll actually feel really. He sounds really hurt by you refusing to share knowledge, because he's been sharing all that knowledge with you, and then now that you have something that he might want to learn, you don't even give it to him. It's very kind of a dick move, if you ask me. And my character, you know, he might look kind of shady, but he's a nice guy. So, you know, it's something I like about these quests is that sometimes, you know, you don't know what the right way to proceed is. Do you save them, or do you let them die? And in this case, you know, letting him die means that at least I gave him the information he wanted, and we will still die. He'll die with me as a friend in mind, instead of dying with me as a guy who doesn't even want to share knowledge with him in mind. But once again, it's kind of not like hidden, but it's kind of ambiguous. Sometimes what will do what. Like in this case, can you expect that, you know, he's gonna go to Blighttown and die? Probably. But can you expect that he's gonna go to Blighttown, be unable to find the Witches of Izalith, and then go hollow because he can't do it? He's losing his mind trying to find these pyromancers. You know, can you expect that? Not really. You probably have a feeling something bad is gonna happen, but not necessarily that. And you don't know what's gonna happen if you say no. So I think a lot of times the quests are mysterious enough that, at least personally I find it interesting. The quests are mysterious enough that you don't really know how to proceed sometimes. You don't know what the right call is, which is something that I always like in games. I don't like when things are too obvious, especially when it comes to oh my god, there's so many of them. Especially when there's a lot of NPCs are already kind of like a something that's handled pretty well in Dark Souls. The fact that they're also handled with this level of like, I guess you could say there's a little bit of replayability in mind because the quests will vary and change if you change in your responses. I like that about it. And I like fighting the ghosts because they behave like ghosts. You know, they can attack through walls and they can extend their arms. But I wouldn't say they're stretchy because once again, I'd say, oh, I'm contradicting myself because I said the plant guys are the only stretchy enemies. But I feel like stretchy is different from extending themselves like this, because extending themselves like this, it's like it's still kind of static, whereas the plant guys they bounce around when they stretch. Like there's a little bit of like an elasticity to the movement, so you can kind of guess how it's going to behave. Whereas the ghosts, you don't know how far they can extend. But the best thing is like the ghosts can go through walls and attack through walls and stuff. Because in Dark Souls, there's a lot of enemies that attack through walls, but your attacks can't go through walls, so it kind of feels unfair sometimes. But as far as ghosts are concerned, it makes total sense that they would be able to attack through walls because they're ghosts. And I find that in a lot of Ghost is here. I find that in a lot of video games, ghosts can go through walls, but it's like ghosts can't go through walls. Ghosts are just kind of floating enemies. So the fact that in Dark Souls they can go through walls is something that I like because it's makes total logical sense. Ghosts, I have so much space behind me. Yeah, when I started the video, Coast was oh my god. Coast is behind me, and now that then he left for a while, and now he's back behind me. The key to the seal can be a little bit hard to find, but it's right here. It's kind of just kind of on the side like this, so it can be hard to guess where to go. But at the same time, if you pay attention and look around you, you're gonna see the giant gate, and you'll see a contraption near the giant gate, and you'll be able to kind of reverse engineer the location of how to get there. So at least to me, it still makes sense. It still works. So what do you find at the bottom of the world? Stagnation and death, like I always talk about. In this case, it's quite literal. All the bad juju ended up here, aka the Dark Raids and the Abyss, and the Four Kings. And the corruption brought upon by those guys made it so that we literally had to flood with water, and the flow led to everybody dying. And all the bad juju built up here. And as you can see, this is a mountain of corpse. And it's crunchy bones as you walk around. And we're gonna start to fight some Dark Raids. And Dark Raids are some pretty cool enemies. They're pretty strong and they have some pretty tough behavior. But you can kill them. They look intimidating, they got their skull mask, they got a pretty big sword, they got their skelly looking armor. I think they're pretty cool. I love this part of New Londo where you kind of just hear like a distant wailing, almost like all the souls of the people who died here are calling out to you. Come on, Dark Wraith. Kind of a dick move, I guess, to attack him through the wall, but... Titanic chunk, that's what I wanted. Can't really heal myself. Well, actually, this is a perfect time to equip the Ring of the Evil Eye and try to heal myself a little bit as I kill enemies. Are you a bad enough dude to use the Ring of the Evil Eye to to live. Well, we'll see. We'll try. They have a 4-piece combo. Gotta be careful about the 4-piece combo. I think they also have a 3-piece combo, so sometimes it's hard to tell if it's gonna be a 3-piece or a 4-piece. But look at that, a little bit of health came back. Now this guy is pretty dangerous. I think he's weak to fire. And he spits like explosive guys. And he spits like gunk that will stick to you and make you heavier. And he has a sword in his mouth, which is pretty dangerous. At least I'm in stairs, so his straight attack has a hard time hitting me. A little bit more health. There's more dark rates in here, so we have to be careful. No. This attack leaves them very vulnerable, so you're able to kill them easily, but I was just slightly out of range. Yeah, I'm down here for something very specific, and I'm gonna go get it soon. I feel like I have not much interesting to say because I've said everything I wanted to say, and then the next things I have to say are gonna be in Sense Fortress and the Asylum, and they're gonna be in like future areas. So for the time being, please humor me as I talk a little bit more about, I guess the story and lore of Dark Souls, but. What I like about New Londo as well, from like a visual standpoint, is that it's let's say it's necessarily lore story, but what I like about it is it's like kind of underground, and since it's underground, the only way light shines through it is like a hole in a hole in the cavern, I guess. And what's cool about that is that you could say it's like they're getting only the kind of leftover sun. They're getting like little dregs of the sun. Like they're not even worthy of having the sun. And it makes you wonder what kind of civilization was down there. But as far as we know, they were doing pretty well and they were kind of thriving, because until the arrival of the Four Kings, it seems like until Four Kings kind of got corrupted and stuff, it seemed like everything was kind of going pretty well. And this is not spoilers, but this is like something that's going to be more relevant later. But one thing I like about New Londo that I wish more areas in the game did, because the game is open-ended after all and it's kind of exploration based, is that to progress in New Londo, to fight the boss of New Londo, you actually need an item that you find that you find somewhere else in the game. So there's no way for you to progress in New Londo without getting that item. And I think it's cool because you're gonna explore regardless, and you're gonna find items as you explore regardless, kind of like if you played a Metroid game. So the fact that you need an item in one area to progress in another area, it makes exploration feel a lot more worthwhile, and it makes the game feel a lot more non-linear, and in a way where you almost feel like you could sequence break certain things. And I really appreciate that. But sadly, it's like New Londo is the only area that kind of does this. Like, of course, sometimes you're gonna find a key in one place that you're gonna use to open another place, but usually the keys are really close to where you need to go anyways. Like finding the key to Valley of Drakes in Blighttown that lets you connect Valley of Drakes to New Londo. Pretty simple stuff. Finding the lower Undead Bird key in Undead Parish right across on the bridge. Pretty easy stuff. Finding the Blighttown key in the depths and finding the depths key in Lower Undead Berg by fighting Capra Demon. Like, it's all really simple stuff. It's like you don't have to be really, you don't have to go out of your way to find these things to progress. Whereas finding the Abyss Walker ring in Darkroot Forest to then come here to fight the Four Kings, that's cool. That's something that I appreciate. And I wish, like I said, there was more stuff like that. But at the same time, there's so many areas in the game that maybe the developers were scared that it would cause too many dependencies between area and area, and it would cause too much, the players feeling too lost or whatever. But I think as long as you're kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, pretty as long as you're pretty liberal with your item placement, and you make sure that like the use of the item itself is pretty clear, then I think you could put a lot of keys and progress items in other areas, and then make them so you're able to access these areas pretty easily. It would create dependencies, inter-area dependencies, which I like and I want more of, while also making it so you don't feel too lost, because you're going to find a lot of items for progress, and they're all going to be pretty obvious about what you can do with them. So at the same time, you're going to be able to think pretty easily about it, and it still makes you feel like you're a problem solver and explorer, which is something that I think is important to these games. Dark Rites are pretty tough enemies. They're pretty strong, they have a pretty elaborate moveset, they're pretty dangerous. Their sword has a lot of reach, so they get a hit behind them even though they're hitting in front. I like them. They're a good enemy type, and it's kind of sad that you don't fight more of them, but at the same time, it's something that I really respect about Dark Souls is that, you know, they But like from a video game standpoint, I think they'd be interesting to fight in other areas with other enemy compositions. But from like a adherence to the game's own consistency standards, it makes sense that you would fight them only in Yolando. And it's something that I don't mind, because Dark Souls is greater than the sum of its parts. So sometimes, you know, sacrificing gameplay satisfaction for game consistency and everything feeling logical and cohesive, that's important, because I think one thing that makes people so attached to Dark Souls is specifically the fact that so much of the game is consistent, and you're able to draw threads from one thing to another and be able to, everything kind of makes sense in your head, and you're able to place everything in your head. And I also think that another reason why people resonate with Dark Souls is that, and the Souls games in general, is that because there's no difficulty option, even though you can kind of tweak the difficulty to your liking by you know, using online, or there's certain things, but anyway, for the most part there's no difficulty options, so you're forced to interact with the mechanics, you're forced to learn the combat, you're forced to understand the controls of the game and the general feel of the game. So as a result, you know, you develop, you could say, like, game literacy of how a Souls game is supposed to be played, so you develop the intuition. So now when you play other games of this type, you already have that like built-in legacy knowledge, and because you've interacted with the game in good faith and actually have to learn everything, you also feel closer to the game, because to learn everything you have to pay attention and you have to care, and if you care, you'll necessarily be attached to the game. So I think the fact that the game forces you to get good, so to speak, also kind of forces you to care, because if you don't care, you're not going to get good. If you don't get good, you can't beat the game. If you can't beat the game, you don't get to experience it. So I think it's kind of a, once again, it's a little bit like the burden of beauty and the burden of story is this idea that for the developers, it's better to develop the game for people who care than it is to develop the game for people who don't care. That way, players who meaningfully interact with the game get a lot out of it, instead of pandering to players that are not going to meaningfully interact with the game. Because it's better, at least in my opinion, it's better to make a game satisfying for those who meaningfully interact with it and be ready to maybe alienate players who don't care than it is to pander to everyone and kind of make a game that's less satisfying to people if they put a lot into it. Because if you put a lot into a game and it doesn't give you a lot back, it doesn't feel good. Whereas if you put a lot into a game and the game gives you a lot back because it's designed by developers who care, then that's good. And this has as much to do about the way the combat is designed with the difficulty and everything as it has to do with the way the story is told, to the way that the world is designed, to the way like everything is kind of made. I think if the game was easy or had an easy mode option and people kind of struggled and then played on easy mode, they would kind of, how do I say this? They wouldn't interact with the game as meaningfully because they could just lower the difficulty to then make the game easier for themselves. And because they're not interacting with the game meaningfully, because if the game becomes easy enough that they don't need to care, then if they don't care, then they don't get to interact meaningfully, and if they don't interact meaningfully, then they don't get much out of the game, and then they think the game sucks. That's where I'm getting at. And that's why I think you're that's also why I think you're not entitled to, oh god, the free dopamine is if you're always given free dopamine and you don't have to work. Sorry if I'm talking a bit loud because I'm getting excited, but if you feel entitled to free dopamine and the game always gives you free dopamine, then and you don't have to work for that dopamine, then you're just gonna use the game as a dopamine generator. You're not gonna care. If you don't care, you don't meaningfully interact. And if you don't meaningfully interact, you think the game sucks because you don't put enough of yourself into it to get enough out of it. If the game is designed with player engagement and players caring about it in mind. Because I think a lot of modern games, they care more about players getting through the game and beating the game and then writing about it on Twitter than they care about meaningful, in-depth engagement with the game. They care more about getting players to play for a long time than they care about and not dropping the game within the first 10 minutes. So how do you do that? Well, you give free dopamine, and then you make players get addicted through like shady tactics or like kind of psychological manipulation, and which involves giving away free dopamine. And then people play for a long time because they're like addicted, or because the game is just not that complex enough that they can just kind of turn their brain off and enjoy it. But if you turn your brain off, then you don't get to analyze, you don't get to appreciate, you don't get to meaningfully interact. And if you don't meaningfully interact, did you really, if a tree falls in a forest and nobody's there to hear it, did it really make a sound? Well, if you play a game and you don't meaningfully interact with it to the point that you actually experience the game, then did you really play the game, or did you just kind of sleepwalk through it? Anyway, I think the reason Dark Souls is so meaningful to a lot of people is because it forces you to meaningfully interact with it, because it's get good or die, and getting good requires you to care. And that's why now, From Software is getting so much success, in my opinion. It's because they made people care, and now that people care, they're able to really get to you. They're able to get that success because the games are successful not necessarily because of mass appeal, though I do think Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring have a little bit more mass appeal going on, but they're not successful just because of the mass appealing qualities to them. I think they're successful because people care about what From Software does, and the reason people care about what From Software does is because you're forced to get good or die, and getting good. I know I'm just repeating myself, but I'm trying to elaborate on what I'm saying. Like, would people really care about the lore as much if they didn't care about the game because for them the game is just an excuse to kill guys. Because if killing guys is so easy, then in your head maybe the game is just about killing guys. And if the game is just about killing guys, then you don't really care about the rest. But if the game's able to make you care, then you start to care about everything. And that's why you have like lore videos. That's why like people will analyze the trailers to try to like nitpick every little thing to be like, oh my god. Because people legitimately care and people are legitimately excited about the new things they're about to discover, because now that they understand the game well enough, because they've meaningfully interacted with the games, that means that they're able to care about other things than simply getting good. Because if you don't get good because you don't care and you just give up on the game, then all you care about is getting good at the gameplay. But once you get good at the gameplay, then you can start to appreciate everything else. I think that's also one of the strengths of the game, is that the game has more to it than just the combat, which is why I don't think people should compare it to Devil May Cry or to things like that. Because what's satisfying about Dark Souls is not just the combat, it's oh my god, I'm so weak! I'm sorry for the outburst. I just it's kind of demotivating to die against these guys over and over again, because you die in 2 hits because you didn't upgrade your health, because you're cocky and you think that you don't need to upgrade your health to be strong, because you think, oh, I'm so good at this game, I'll be able to do anything. But it turns out that you suck, because you have to talk about the game as you play, and you only have 18 vitality, even though you're fighting enemies that realistically you should fight when you have like 30 vitality. But that's just me being cocky. What was I saying? Oh yeah, people care about these games, and I don't think people care just because the games are made like, oh, the game has interesting story, so I care. I think it's that people care about the story whether or not it's interesting, because they spent a lot of time with the game and they've learned to care. But I also think that the story is legitimately interesting, and I think the lore is legitimately interesting. But I think that even if the lore was a little bit less interesting, the story was a little bit less interesting, people would still be as engrossed in it regardless, because the game forces you to pay attention, it forces you to learn, it forces you to read, it forces you to care, it forces you to engage. Something like, I don't know, you could even say a little bit, it's like League of Legends. I personally don't like League of Legends, but I know a lot of people who like League of Legends, and one of the reasons is because they had to get good, so they had to play a lot and they had to care. And since they care about League of Legends to that degree, because they've been playing it for so long and had to get good, because they care about League of Legends, now they care about the character, the story, the lore, the music videos, and stuff like that. And the reason they care is, you could partially say it's due to sunk costs fallacy, which you could also say that about the Soul series. Maybe the reason some people care is just because they've invested so much time into it that at this point they can't not care. They feel like they can't not care. I think that's part of it for sure. But I was saying it's just that if you meaningfully engage with something, you get something out of it. It's like getting to know somebody. When you get to know somebody, even if you know that they have flaws and problems and stuff, you still appreciate them as a friend or as a lover or something. You still know them with all their flaws, and you appreciate them despite their flaws. You appreciate them because of their flaws. But it then never would have happened unless you started caring about that person enough to learn about them. Alright, boys. More pointless attempt at fighting Dark Knights and just dying. This feels mindless. So at this point, I feel like I have nothing to say because my brain is just so focused on doing this. Let me just take a little bit of time to actually do this. Actually get this done the proper way. What have I done? I like the sound design in Dark Souls. I think it's a lot of very kind of... oh, I hate being stun locked. I need more poise. But I like the sound design in Dark Souls. It's very simple. A lot of it are like stock sounds, but they're used to good effect, I think. And the few unique sound effects that they have, like the sound for collecting souls or the death sound, those sounds have become iconic because they're efficient, and that goes into the voice acting as well. You know, the fact that they're all theater actors, so they develop lines with a certain spice that maybe professional voice actors for video games wouldn't have, because voice acting for video games is very different from theater. And also the fact that the game doesn't have much music, so all you really hear is the sound effects, and therefore that also means that when music plays, you know, you hope the music is good and meaningful. And for the most part, I think Dark Souls is a pretty good soundtrack. I think they reuse a few songs sometimes, like Centipede Demon and Ceaseless Discharge is the same song, and Taurus Demon and Capra Demon use the same song, I think. Or like Asylum Demon and Taurus Demon is the same song, and then Capra Demon, Centipede Demon, and Ceaseless Discharge is the same song. There's a few reused songs, but for the songs that aren't reused, the songs that are meaningful, they tend to hit, they tend to work. I think the soundtrack is a little bit less memorable than... I think some of the great songs in this game are really amazing. But I think overall, I find the soundtrack a little bit less memorable than Demon Souls' soundtrack. I feel like Demon Souls has a lot more variety to its soundtrack in a good way, where everything really has its own vibe. I think that's also part of because the game is, like I keep saying, Demon Souls is kind of a discrete game, so every area has its own identity. But I also think it's because in Dark Souls, there's a lot of orchestral stuff, like full-on orchestral stuff with, you know, the choir, and in the end it kind of feels samey, which is why some of the songs that don't have choir, songs that use it in a different way, or songs that are kind of differentiate themselves a little bit more by focusing on one instrument rather than the entire orchestra, tend to stand out a little bit more. And I know this may be a contentious opinion, but I dislike fully orchestral soundtracks in video games, because I often feel like when composers have access to a full orchestra, they end up making very samey looking songs, because they always try to use the full orchestra to their advantage. It's like, you know, I like the Super Mario Galaxy 1 soundtrack a lot. You know, I think they use the orchestra very well, but a lot of the songs use the full orchestra, and it makes them sound samey in my mind. Whereas Mario Galaxy 2 is a lot more reserved about its orchestra, probably because at that point, you know, it's less novel to them to have a full orchestra, because they already had one for a few games now. Not that the Wii has had its fair share of games. So in the Super Mario Galaxy 2 soundtrack, a lot of the songs are more subdued. You know, they have an orchestra, but they don't always use all the instruments at once, and there's just a little bit more of that that special sauce in the songs where they focus on a specific instrument or a specific vibe instead of being all about the works, so to speak. You know, the absence of something is as important as the use of something. Sometimes, and this is something that Dark Souls does, where when it talks about disparity. But I also mean beyond that. I also mean just like, you know, in a game, choosing not to have a difficulty option says a lot about the game. Or in a game, you know, not having music unless you're fighting a boss or in a specific moment adds something. You know, it's all small touches like that too, which I guess then you could, at that point, you can talk about Fumito Ueda, which actually is a big inspiration for this. Fumito Ueda is the main lead guy at Team Ico, and Team Ico made you know, Ico obviously. They made Shadow of the Colossus. They made The Last Guardian, and those games are very minimalist because Fumito Ueda subscribes to a school of design that he calls design by subtraction, where it's all about removing what doesn't add to the game experience, which I think is something that the developer for the main design guy for Dark Souls talks about. You know, Hidetaka Miyazaki, he's a big fan of Fumito Ueda, and he talks about how, you know, Dark Souls and Demon Souls were kind of made with that kind of minimalism in mind, where everything that doesn't add to the experience gets removed, and they only try to keep things that feels like it feels substantial in a way. So, oh, you don't know what kind of atmospheric music you want to make for every area? You're not sure if music is going to add to the experience? Well, how about just not having songs there and only have songs with a very distinct identity for bosses and for specific, more kind of, I guess you could say, emotional moments, like meeting meeting the fair lady, or cutscenes, or things like that. Firelink Shrine. I think it's very effective. Trying to think about like stuff that Dark Souls doesn't do that a lot of games do, and then how that makes you, how that changes the experience. I mean, Dark Souls doesn't have conventional quests, even though it's an RPG. I think that's something that's worth talking about. Like I say, the quests exist, you know, you've seen me do certain quests, but the quests are very fluid, very free form, you know, it's a lot of the quests in Dark Souls are very free form, you know, it's a lot of NPCs will kind of do their own thing, and you'll do your own thing, and sometimes you'll overlap, and what you do will affect their quest, but they never really tell you like, oh, can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? Can you do this for me? You never have a quest log. You know, the quests are kind of more, they're not concrete. They more exist as just as like things that happen in the game that you are sometimes part of, and I like that. I'm gonna die again, man. This game. What? Okay, I'm very confused as to what happened here. I guess that very tip of his sword touched me at the very last frame of his attack animation. It's too hot in here, man. I can't wait for this thunderstorm. So where I live, we've been kind of hit by a heat wave, and it's been pretty horrible. Going from sub 12 degree temperatures to now going to above like 30-ish degrees and more every day, and like lots of humidity. It's been pretty horrible. I can't deny. And I hate the heat. I'm not made for the heat. It makes me delirious. And I can't even open my windows, because if I open my windows, all the humidity and the heat's gonna come in. And I don't have any air conditioning, so I'm just dying right now. But because it's been so abnormally warm, we're gonna have some pretty strong weather that's gonna come stabilize everything. Because the bubble's gonna pop, so to speak. And we keep getting warnings, strong weather warnings, severe thunderstorms with dangerous winds. I just want to get my items. But I keep getting killed by dark raids. Well, lesson learned, for sure. Beef, you've learned your lesson. Upgrade your health more. Stop being so cocky. I should have thought about it. Upgrading my health, because I'm gonna suck, because I'm gonna be talking about the game constantly, so I'm gonna be distracted and not focused. But I didn't think so. I'm sorry to subject you to the same thing over and over again. It's just something that I want to do, because I want to do it now instead of later, because I think it's more meaningful to do it now than later. I think that later it's like diminishing returns a little bit. We're gonna do guerrilla tactics. I think we're gonna run around and be crazy, and we're not gonna fight the enemies. We're gonna kind of keep them guessing and hide and run and so on. For sure I have to kill this guy. God damn it, man. The stun lock is horrible. It's a lot easier when your bonfire is filing shrine, so you're right next to the. So you're right next to the Yolando. Having to do this every time, having to take 2 elevators every time is pretty mind-numbing. I've been thinking about if I want to play the other games after this, because I have a lot to say about the other games too, but my problem is that I think a lot of it would be redundant because I've talked about it in Dark Souls 1, and I feel like for the most part it'll be like, well, this thing that they did in Dark Souls 3 is good because it's an evolution of something in Dark Souls 1. I think this thing they did in Dark Souls 3 is bad because it detracts from the design of what a Souls game should be, blah blah. I think in Dark Souls 2 all I would say is just that the game feels very incoherent and not cohesive. So I feel like a lot of it would be very it'd be pointless because I'm saying everything I have to say in this game, and because the other games are so similar, the only things that I would have to talk about are the differences, but the games are so long that if I only talk about the differences, I'll run out of stuff to talk about before the games are even over. So I'm probably not gonna do Dark Souls 2 and 3. I'd consider doing Bloodborne. I'd consider doing Elden Ring because Elden Ring is kind of like an evolution of the Dark Souls concept instead of a sequel. The same way that Dark Souls is kind of an evolution of the Demon Souls concept and not a sequel. But Elden Ring is so long that I feel like it would just make for a very kind of drawn out and padded experience, so to speak. I don't know if it would be satisfying. I considered doing Demon Souls, but I don't like emulating stuff and streaming because there's a lot of problems with the streaming stuff when the emulator is running, and it's kind of a hassle. So I'm probably not going to, and I don't have a capture card, so I can't play Demon Souls on my PS3. So probably not gonna have another Souls game on the Beef Stews, at least not for a while. My next game, I'd like to do a platformer. Thing is, I don't know if I have a platformer that I have a lot to say about. I know some platformers that I like, that I want to play. I just wonder how much of it's gonna be like worthwhile conversation regarding the platformer itself. You know, I was considering maybe playing Rayman 3. I really like Rayman 3, and it's a platformer, and it would make me talk about platformers, and I have a few things to say about platformers, but I'm unsure. No! Fighting these guys makes me realize how weak I am. I think I forgot how to parry them, which is also terrible. Because I think, you know, Rayman 3, I feel like I would have a lot to say about it, and it's a game that I really like, so in general, I think I'd be having a really good time, and I think it's important to have a good time when you play video games, and you're talking about them. Because even if you know, like I said, I don't think that video games have to be fun, but I think if a game is fun, or at least you enjoy playing it, then that's important, especially for discussion purposes. Because like, one of my greatest philosophies is that I don't think games have to be fun to be considered good, but I do think you have to find some level of enjoyment. But by enjoyment, I don't mean fun. You can have intellectual enjoyment from something without finding it fun in like a literal like fun sense, you know, like it's hard to explain, but finding something interesting and engaging is not the same as finding something fun. I think when something is fun, it is interesting and engaging, but I don't think that all interesting and engaging things are fun, but all fun things aren't. Does that make any sense? No, he's gonna kill me because I got stun locked. Coz. What's going on, Coz? What's going on? I'm so sorry. I'm just getting slightly frustrated because I feel like this is not fun content to watch. I don't think this is engaging content to watch. It's just me dying over and over again, trying to find things to say because I have nothing to say, and the reason I have nothing to say is because I'm not progressing, and I'm not progressing because I keep doing the same thing over and over again. So I apologize for that. But at this point, you know, I want to get through it so that I can finally progress and be able to find new topics of conversation. This episode has been a lot more aimless than I expected it to be because I got cursed. I got kept dying because I was cursed and I had no HP, and I keep dying because I have no HP. Turns out all my problems are caused by me not having much HP. Would have thought. I mean, I know people don't really comment or interact with me much on YouTube because I have so few views, and people who watch my videos tend to be people who know me either in real life or on the internet, so they talk to me via other channels. But if you have suggestions on games that I should play for this series, let me know. I tend to prefer when it's games that I've already played. That way I have a lot to say about them already. I've already thought about them a lot. But it doesn't have to be. It could be a game that you think is worth talking about that maybe I've never played, and that way you can get my first thoughts on it. And usually I tend to have pretty strong opinions, even if it's something I'm experiencing for the first time. So we'll see. But I was considering, yeah, like I said, Rayman 3. I was thinking maybe of talking about Fable, because even though I really like Fable, I don't think Fable's a good RPG. And the reason I don't think it's a good RPG, which I'm not going to go too into detail now, because if I do end up playing the game, then I'll want to talk about it. But I don't think Fable's a very good RPG, because I think that it doesn't let you... Because the entire premise is like, do you want to be good or do you want to be evil? But the good and evil stuff is very static, and it doesn't feel organic, in the sense that, well, it's not just that like, oh, if you're a nice guy, you're like the nicest guy ever, and if you're a bad guy, you're the baddest guy ever. It's also just because the way you are evil or you are nice is not through gameplay, it's through arbitrary decisions that you make as you play the game. It's like sometimes like, do you want to do this or do you want to do that? And then you choose whether you want to do it or not. And there's a lot of instances like that where it's more so like, do you want to do this quest where you're going to do evil stuff, or do you want to do this quest where you're going to do nice stuff? Or do you want to do this quest, or like during a quest, even if it's a nice guy quest, it'll be like, well, either you get to be a goody two-shoes or you get to choose this slightly evil option. So it sounds like an arbitrary choice that you make, and it's never like it's never an organic choice that you make as you play the game. It's never like your own actions dictate how things end up being, if that makes any sense. Because that's something I've always disliked about video games, is when video games are an interactive medium, but instead of using their interactivity to their advantage to make you make your own decisions unknowingly as you play, instead they make you pick from options in a menu, or they make you pick from like arbitrarily. And that's why I like Dark Souls. All your decisions are more or less, except for like a few dialogue choices, all your decisions are done through gameplay. Do you want to kill something or not? Do you want to proceed or not? Sometimes you don't even realize that you're making decisions because you're just playing the game and you thought, well, you know, I was just doing this thing, like, I don't know, I didn't think something would happen. That's the best, in my opinion. For example, you know, certain actions will trigger NPCs to progress their quest line, but you might not know that these actions are actually what causes the quest lines to progress. For example, Lautrec killing Anastasia the Firekeeper, that's caused by you killing the Gaping Dragon. So like, is it a choice to kill the Gaping Dragon or not? No, it's not. However, was it a choice to keep Laverick alive despite him being really shady? Yes. Did the game go like, this guy's shady, do you want to kill him? Yes or no? No, it just made him shady as fuck, and then it let you choose whether or not you wanted to do something about it. And now you get to avenge the Firekeeper, and once again, that's up to you. Do you want to avenge Firekeeper? Do you just want to kind of not do anything about it and let it... I can't believe I did this. I should have just used the homeward bone. Now, there's a lot of souls on the line because I died, but I don't care. Yeah, you know, it's I like that. In Dark Souls 2, like for example, well, not Dark Souls 2, in Dark Souls, 2, for example, the way that stuff progresses as well.
All my years in the trade, that might be the finest. How's about you leave that ember with me? I'm just an old smith. I'd give my left arm for a gem like that.
Yeah, of course.
Well, thank you mightily for that. Now, just leave the rest to me. Andre of Astora gets the job done, you shall see.
So I'm gonna upgrade my weapon to a S-Stock plus 10, and now that it's an S-Stock plus 10, I can upgrade it to an S-Stock plus 11 and put it in the very strong weapon range where it'll go all the way up to plus 15, which is the maximum in this game.
Don't get yourself... No.
What was I saying before? Crafted my... Oh yeah, the fact that your decisions are kind of through gameplay. For example, whether you decide to summon certain characters will impact some of how their quests end up. Whether you decide to talk to certain characters will change how their quests end up. For example, if you don't talk to Solaire, I don't think his quest ever progresses. Or maybe it does, because, like I said, enemies don't depend on you for stuff. But like, for an example, let's say like right now, you know, I'm giving humanity to the fair lady to make her get better. And it turns out that if you give her enough humanity, you get access to a certain shortcut. And that shortcut, if you open that shortcut, you actually can save Solaire's life. And this is something that you don't know will do that. But by doing that, you've just now impacted Solaire's quest. And I find that very interesting because it's one of those things where you made a decision, you made an action through gameplay, you opened up that shortcut, and opening that shortcut does not just influence you, it influences Solaire's quest as well, because Solaire's quest is now, you know, his quest is to get to a certain place, and by you opening that shortcut, he uses that shortcut to get to that place because he doesn't have to go the long way around. And since he doesn't have to go the long way around, his quest ends up different. And that you didn't even do that for Solaire. You didn't even know that it was going to affect Solaire. You just did it because, well, something you did and it affected Solaire. So it's one of those things where it's a decision you made through gameplay organically that you didn't even know was a decision that actually ended up affecting something. I think that's the best. I think that's what games do the best. It's like in Silent Hill 2. In Silent Hill 2, there's how you play will dictate the ending you get, and it doesn't even have to do with like arbitrary decisions. It's like if you take a lot of damage and look at your knife item a lot, and you look at your gun item a lot, then the game is like, well, you know, you're sadistic, you're masochistic, you want to hurt yourself with enemies, and you keep looking at the gun because you have a strange fascination with the gun. So we're gonna give you the ending where you commit suicide. And that was all because of your actions in the game that you don't even know were choices, but it was your own specific actions, it was your own specific way of playing that affected the outcome you got, that affected what happened. And I think that's the best. I think it's when you don't know you're making decisions that will affect something, you just know you're making decisions in the game as you're playing the moment-to-moment gameplay. But your specific way of playing, your moment-to-moment gameplay ends up affecting how things go. I think that's the best. Now we're back at the asylum, and I like when games let you do that. I like when games let you go back to early areas, especially if it's a tutorial area and it's like changed a little bit, so it feels different. It's like, oh, you know, how did things change since I came here? What's nice is when the things don't change that much, so when you come back, you're like super strong, you're like, man, I've grown a lot. But I also like when, you know, you come back and it's different and it makes you think about how it was when you first came here. And I like that the game kind of gives you a hint that you'll be coming back, because you find an item that opens a door in the asylum, and so then you're like, well, clearly I'll be coming back to the asylum. And the asylum has a few tricks up its sleeve, like as a Dark Knights. Oops. Enemies are pretty smart in the sense that, like, it's obvious stuff to do, it's like an obvious thing to program, but enemies will take advantage of when you drink your Estus. But you know, not every game does that. A lot of games, enemies are kind of a little bit more passive, and they you have a lot of openings, and when you use those openings, they don't really do anything. But in this case, they find openings too. It's not the most clever AI. Like, I think you know, the future games have a little bit more. Well, not Dark Souls 2, but Dark Souls 3 and Bloodborne and Elden Ring and Sekiro. They have a bit better AI that kind of takes advantage of openings a lot more, and they create openings for themselves a lot more, and they kind of chain things together to create openings with themselves, which I like a lot. It's, you know, you can see him come for you. It's pretty sad. This is an example of you know, the burden of spectacle, or the burden of story that I was talking about, because Oscar is the first NPC you talk to in the game. He's the guy who saves you from your cell. He's the guy who you basically owe your entire life to, if you want to see it that way. And he's the one who gives you your Estus flask. So in a way, you know, you can think about it as like your quest. If you want to see it that way, if you want to have a intrinsic motivation, you want to have an extrinsic motivation to the game's quest. That motivation is Oscar. You want to fulfill his dying wish. And when you come back here, he's hollow and he's lost his mind. Anyway, he's hollow and he's lost his mind, and it's one of those things where in a lot of other games, there may have been dialogue or sad music or a cutscene, or like the game would have brought attention to the fact that, like, hey, this is Oscar, you've killed him. Yeah, he saved you, and now, you know, he's here and he's lost his mind and you have to kill him. And isn't this sad? Don't you feel sad? I mean, look at this. This is so sad. But Dark Souls doesn't do that. Dark Souls doesn't even put music. It doesn't put dialogue. It doesn't even pay attention to the fact that he's coming to kill you and he's lost his mind. Nobody ever mentions this moment to you. It's just something that happens, and it makes you feel bad about it, because you're like, well, you know, this guy was my first friend, if you will, and now I have to kill him because he's gone hollow. What a tragic end for a character that I didn't even think I'd see again. And it's the fact that the game is mature about it and is confident. I would say it's very confident. It's the fact that the game is so confident about it that it shows you, like, hey, look, this guy, you decide how you feel about this, and you decide how you react to this. I think that's I can't believe I forgot about the fucking thing. But it's like, yeah, you decide how you feel about this, and you decide how you witness this moment. We leave everything in your hands. I really like that. I think it's one of the reasons why people like Dark Souls, is because it makes them feel respected, because Dark Souls treats you in a mature way. It's not pandering. It doesn't feel not pandering is not the word. It's not insecure, because an insecure developer would want you to see what they want you to see. They would put it in your face. They would like make it obvious. Whoops. But From Software are confident enough in themselves that you can decide how you feel about something. You can decide how you react to something. They let the moment speak for itself because they know that as good designers, you can appreciate this moment for what it is, without them needing to pull at your heartstrings or do anything to kind of psychologically manipulate you. You know, games speak for themselves. Games make you feel things through gameplay. They don't need to make you feel things. They make you feel things through gameplay and through their design of how they weave the gameplay with what's going on. They don't need to they don't need to pay attention to things with cutscenes or to try to like I say, to psychologically manipulate you. I'm not saying that cutscenes are ineffective or that you can't have moments that bring attention to themselves. I just think that in competent hands, you don't necessarily need to, and it can be very impactful to let the player have the burden of spectacle and the burden of beauty on themselves. No. I think this part of the game induces panic because you fall down and you lose a lot of HP, and it's like, oh god, you know, what have I done? And a lot of people might say that it's cheap because you lose so much HP as soon as you start the fight, but I don't know. I think it's not necessarily a bad thing. I think it induces panic and makes you think about what's going on a little bit more, and because it's kind of a repeat of the Asylum Demon, but he's just stronger and he has like explosion attacks. I think I think differentiating the fight by kind of inducing that stress on you is effective. However, the problem is that you'll probably die and then you'll have to restart. And now you don't have that stress, you don't have that surprise anymore. It just kind of, whatever, you know, I'm just falling down and fighting the Asylum Demon, whatever. Ouch. I dislike this boss because it's a reused boss, and even though it has a different moveset from the Asylum Demon, what I dislike about it is that later on there's going to be another version of this boss that's reskinned, and it has the exact same moveset as this one. So while this one could have justified its existence by being a slightly harder version of the Asylum Demon with a different moveset, sadly it then becomes identical to the Demon Fire Sage, which has the exact same moveset. And the boss is pretty straightforward once you get around to figuring it out. It's just the only problem I would say is like the area of effect attack that it does with like the explosion is kind of hard to tell where the area of effect reaches. Like this one goes really far, but it doesn't look like it would go that far. And the one where he slams downward instead of slamming to the side to make his area of effect, it doesn't attack as much behind him as it attacks in front of him, this one. It attacks more in front of him than it attacks behind him, but it does attack behind him, and it's hard to tell where it goes because the area of effect, the look of the area of effect attack is very fuzzy, so it makes it hard to tell. And that's something I kind of dislike. Like, I don't mind a little bit of ambiguity in what things look like, but what I dislike is when it's very hard to tell where something is because there's no defined boundaries. Especially if they spam the attack like this. Like this, I know if I go a little bit behind him, I'll be safe. But it's like, how much behind do I have to go? But like most bosses, if you stay near their butt and circle around them, you'll be mostly safe. And you know, because they know this, they make the bosses have such gigantic, disgusting butts. That way, you get something to look at while you fight the boss. Oh yeah, so juicy and chunky. Ooh, I don't want a bite of that. Am I right, boys? All that monster cellulite, man. Something I wonder about, which is you know, demons are born from the Chaos Flame, but not all demons are on fire. However, a lot of demons you see do have some level of, oh my god, they do have some level of oh my god, they have some level of fire to them, but not all demons are on fire. So it makes you wonder, like, are demons born with fire and then they kind of extinguish over time, or are demons just like a different kind of life form that spawns from the Chaos Flame instead of the same way that like mortals, I guess, and like the undead come from fire, demons come from chaos fire, so it's like a twisted form of life. And in this case, I guess what I'm saying is, I wonder if they kind of slowly extinguish over time, or if they can be born already not on fire. Because Demon Fire Sage is on fire, but you know, Capra Demon and Taurus Demon and well, Stray Demon and Asylum Demon are not on fire. And but then, you know, you have like the Chaos Witch, Quelaag, you have Bed of Chaos, you have everything related to Chaos is on fire, and demons are from Chaos. And not just that, but there's also like Centipede Demon and Cease's Discharge are on fire, and a lot of demon enemies have like fire abilities. So it makes you wonder, like, what's the difference between Asylum Demon, Stray Demon, Taurus Demon, Capra Demon? Why aren't they on fire? Why don't they have fire-based abilities? Anyway, I don't have much to say about this boss. It has a lot of HP, it's very tanky, it has a very repetitive moveset. Two attacks are almost the same, it's an area of effect like this. One of them goes a bit further than the other one, and I hate it. And it has a double slam, and yeah, see, it goes so far, like, it's so hard to tell how far it goes. I thought I was safe, but it just killed me. I've always hated Stray Demon. I think it's one of the worst fights in the game. I think it barely warrants its existence. I think the fact that it's a repeat of Asylum Demon is already kind of towing the line. But the fact that it starts with you losing health, which is only effective the first time, and the fact that its moveset is very repetitive and kind of hard to read is kind of even worse. I don't know, maybe I'm just a grumpy old man, but I don't really like this boss fight. The only thing that I don't mind about this boss fight is that it gives you a Titanite slab, which is a pretty nice reward. And it's so big that you can rarely see what it's doing. And since you can't really see what it's doing, sometimes you can't tell if it wants to slam you, if it's going to do an area of effect attack. Yeah, that side slam AoE is the worst. This AoE is not so bad. I don't mind it. It has a pretty clear cut, like more or less clear cut size. Like, you know that if you're behind him, you'll be a little bit safe, and like if you're more or less underneath him, it's gonna be fine, because the attack radiates from him or her. I actually don't know if it's a guy or a girl. I also think it's way too tanky for its own good. It's like, I guess that's what differentiates this demon from all the other bosses, is that it's kind of tanky. Because most bosses in this game aren't very tanky, but the Sam Demon is. Stray Demon is. I think this is the Iron Golem song, which makes me sad. Because I just realized now that this is, I'm pretty sure this is the Iron Golem song. And, you know, the Iron Golem is cool, and it makes me sad that his song is not unique to him, to it. And now I'm trying to think, is this the same song as the Asylum Demon song? Because if so, that's even more sad that Iron Golem is the same song as the tutorial boss. There we go. Yeah, I don't have much to say about this boss. I think it's a not very nice boss. It has a very nice reward. And I think it's a bit of a letdown. Especially considering you also fight Demon Fire Sage, and Demon Fire Sage is the same thing. Except it has a fire skin. And I'm pretty sure the attacks it does don't even do fire damage. So it's even more of like a rehash. Yeah, I remember. I don't know if this is a true thing, but I remember reading somewhere that like the Demon Fire Sage, the area of effect attack it does, which are like a magic explosion, just like this guy, the magic explosions aren't even fire elemental attacks, so it's even worse because you're not even you're fighting a fire demon and it's not doing fire damage. So it's like, what's the point? Time to level up. I can level up twice. We're gonna level up health once, and we're gonna level up dexterity once. Because so basically, I should talk about weapon upgrades a little bit, because I said it's like an esoteric system, but one thing that I should explain is that basically there's two ways to upgrade your weapons. There's either a way that's gonna give it an element and remove scaling, or there's ways that reinforce scaling or give it new kinds of scaling. So the way that gives you the most scaling is going to be the regular upgrades. So going from +1 to +5, from +5 to +10, and from +10 to +15, that gives you increased scaling, and it just increases the damage in general, but it doesn't give it any special properties other than that. So this is a crow, but it's not talking to me. Basically, there's a crow here, and it goes, you, give me soft. And if you drop items, it kind of trades items with you. But it's a kind of annoying and complicated process. But basically, if you want the witch ring, which I have, to talk to the fair lady, you need to give her the sunlight maggot. And the sunlight maggot is a unique item, so it's kind of a big trade-off. But it makes sense because it's a big item. It's a big trade-off because it's a unique item for a unique item. What was I saying? Oh yeah, weapon upgrades. So scaling is the damage modifier you get. It's how well a weapon gets a damage modifier based on your stats. So I'll show you. My S-Talk currently has a D scaling in strength and a C scaling in dexterity. And due to its scaling, it gets a +63 damage bonus to its already base 172 damage. And if I were to upgrade it into a raw weapon, for example, raw weapon would give it more raw damage, but it would remove all scaling from it. So it's basically, raw weapons are good if your weapon, if you have low stats and you just want a really strong weapon, raw is quite good. Crystal weapons are like raw weapons, where it removes the scaling, but it increases the damage significantly. The difference is that crystal weapons increase the damage much more significantly than raw weapons, but they have the trade-off of, once you have a crystal weapon, the crystal weapon can no longer be repaired ever. So once a crystal weapon breaks, it is broken for all of eternity. So it never really feels worth it. Then you have fire augmentation, which gives a fire elemental boost to your weapon. However, the fire elemental boost does not scale on anything, and you lose all scaling. So it's a flat elemental bonus. You have lightning, which is the same thing as fire. It's a flat elemental bonus with and it removes all scaling. You have enchanted weapons, which I believe add a flat... No, enchanted weapons add a smaller amount of magic damage to your weapon, but it makes them scale really well with intelligence. So the damage you get from those upgrades is smaller, but because the scaling is much better, if you have high intelligence stats, it will make, in the long run, the weapon do a lot more magic damage. Magic weapons will add a little bit of magic scaling and add magic damage, but it won't decrease the damage as much. So it's good if you have a little bit of points in magic, but not that much. Then hold on. We're gonna go to Dark Root Garden. Then there's chaos weapons, and chaos weapons add fire damage to it. However, the fire damage scales on your humanity. So the more humanity you have in your counter, the more damage it'll do. But I believe it stops scaling at 10. So if you have 99 humanity, the weapon's not like super strong. Then there's occult scaling, which I believe scales on your faith, and it gives the weapon occult damage. And occult damage is basically a damage type that does more damage to gods. So there's not that many gods in the game, but it does more damage to gods and it does more damage to humans. So if you fight other players in PvP, occult weapons are quite strong. And if you fight NPCs that are humans, like Havel or like any of the NPCs that you can talk to, or any of the aggressive NPCs, like every NPC that behaves like the player, basically, they take more damage from occult weapons. And then there's faith weapons. I don't remember what they're called. I think they're just called miracle weapons or faith weapons. Holy weapons? Blessed weapons? You have holy weapons, and holy weapons scale on your faith and deal magic damage based on your faith. And they have the special ability to make skeletons stop respawning. And I think they do more damage to occult creatures, but there's not that many occult creatures. But I think everything that's occult is like creatures from the abyss, basically. Home sweet home. Not home sweet home, but the Darkroot Garden. You know, nice area. I'm eating a lot of souls because there's a door you can open if you spend 20,000 souls. And I'm not quite there yet, but I have a few things to do that might bring me to that amount. So yeah, as you can see, the weapon upgrade system in Dark Souls, it's pretty cool because there's a lot of ways to upgrade your weapon, and they each have their own trade-offs. Typically, if you're planning on investing a lot into your stats, such as dexterity, strength, magic, and faith, it's better to invest in types of upgrades that will grant more scaling. However, scaling is something that pays off over the long run. Whereas, you know, if you don't have much in those stats and you want to upgrade mostly your health and your stamina so that you can roll around a lot and tank a lot of hits, then it's better to invest in elemental weapons or raw and crystal weapons. And I think, you know, when people play the game the first time, they tend to invest more into their health, and therefore they put points into their because they invest more points into their health and their stamina to have more survivability. They will then, as a result, spend less points on stats, miscellaneous stats, and therefore they'll tend to prefer elemental weapons. Like, I know when the game first came out, a lot of people were using the Drake Sword because the Drake Sword early on does a lot of damage. It doesn't scale, so it's a really strong weapon because no matter how shitty your stats are, the weapon will do a lot of damage regardless, and it can carry you to the early game. But the thing with dragon weapons is that they don't scale, and they're very hard to upgrade because they require dragon scales to upgrade. Yeah, I had a feeling I would die just because the water does such a big area of effect that even if you dodge through the projectile itself, you'll get hit by the area of effect. But it's okay. I get to talk about weapons still. And then after the Drake Sword, you know, the Drake Sword could carry you for a while, and then you'd get to Sense Fortress, and you'd get the Lightning Spear, and then the Lightning Spear would carry you through a pretty big part of the game. And people are like, yeah, Lightning Spear is really good because it does a lot of damage and does the lightning element, and turns out a lot of things in this game are weak to lightning. So it's just kind of advantageous in general. And a lot of people also eventually would farm the Silver Knights in Anor Londo to get the Silver Knight Longsword, which does a lot of damage and is an overall good weapon with a pretty good moveset. But eventually, as you know, people started to learn the game more and learn the mechanics more, you started to see a lot more people advocating for regular weapons, which have very, very good scaling. In this case, I'm making a hybrid of an intelligence and dexterity character, so I'm putting a lot of points into dexterity and intelligence, so my S-Stock does more damage because it scales decently well on dexterity. And my intelligence, it's kind of similar, I guess you could call it this, call it scaling, but they call it Magic Adjust. And Magic Adjust is basically a value that checks how much intelligence you have, and based on a mathematical equation that takes into account your Magic Adjust and your intelligence, it basically creates like a relative strength for your spells. So if you have high Magic Adjust and high int, then your spells are going to do a lot of damage. Well, this enemy sucks a lot because basically you have to bait for its attack and then attack its heads and just wait for it to die. It's very non-dynamic. It's a cool idea, and I like the idea of a Hydra, but it's just not a satisfying fight. And now I'm being assaulted by crystal golems, so I'm hoping that the Hydra can take care of them. And the Hydra, you know, the animation's a bit weird, and sometimes it misses, or sometimes the heads clip somewhere and you can't attack the Hydra properly, so it's pretty difficult. And if you don't do enough damage, actually, the Hydra can lose all its heads and still be alive. Because I believe the heads kind of get broken the same way that tails get broken, so yes, it's a question of damage, but it's mostly a question of how much poise damage you're dealing to the head. So you're able to break all the heads without killing the Hydra, and then that can lead to major problems where you can't reach the Hydra because the Hydra doesn't have heads to attack you with anymore. And then, because it doesn't have heads to attack you with anymore, you end up being unable to attack it unless you have ranged weapons. And if you don't have ranged weapons and you can't attack it, then you just die. And it causes a bit of lag because there's a lot of stuff to render and lots of particle effects. And you gotta be careful because there's like a bottomless pit right here, and it's pretty hard to see because it's obscured by the water. So basically you want to place yourself in such a way that the heads are easily accessible when they land. Almost there, boys, almost there. What? Alright, attack me, you dumb Hydra. Never mind. Yeah, see, that's a... No. That's a big no-no. Yeah, we might have to rely on a ranged weapon for this. It's gonna suck, but it's what we have to do. Oh! Oh! Oh well. I have okay dex, so I'll be able to do okay damage. See, look, I broke all of its heads and it didn't die. Oh, and now it automatically dies if you break all its heads. That's actually a good fix. Yeah, I used to have a problem where you could kill all its heads without killing it. It was just the biggest pain ever. There's another strange glitch like that later on with well, it's not a glitch, but it's just like something you don't expect. There's a boss called the Four Kings, and well, Ingward talks about it a little bit in Yolanda, but there's a boss called the Four Kings, and the Four Kings, if you don't kill them in time, basically the Four Kings always spawn a new king. So if you're slow about dealing damage to them, it can lead to you having to fight all Four Kings at the same time. But also, it can actually spawn a fifth king if you deal too little damage. Because the kings, I believe, spawn based on health thresholds and damage thresholds of each of the individual kings. So if there's 4 kings and they're all really low on health, the combined health of the 4 kings will make it so there's an enemy that's supposed to be here, but it's not here because we just killed the Hydra. So you have to quit and come back, I believe. Yep. Yeah, the combined health of the 4 kings is like so low that it'll think that maybe one of the kings is dead, so it'll spawn a new one, and you'll have 5 kings. It's kind of an oversight, but it's stuff that can happen because it's just how the game's programmed, right? If you look in the crystal, you can see there's a little lady in there.
So, 'tis thou who rescueth me. Most gracious, I am deeply obliged. I am dust of Ulysses. I cometh from an age long before thine. I cannot stay here for long. So, before I disappear, allow me to ask one thing. My home, Ulysses, is the home of ancient sorceries. My hope is to pass this profound knowledge to thee, with thine approval. Would this be of assistance to thee?
Yes, of course.
My heartfelt thanks. I am pleased beyond words. Then I shout, engrave my signature. If thou art in need, pray summon me from my signature. It seems that my time is done. May the great flames guide thee.
Meow. We're going to use our homework bone. We're gonna buy a specific item from Mr. Andre over here.
Well, used me.
Crest of Artorias.
Go get your nut.
Well, this is actually a hint. If you're trying to know how to progress, because the crest of Artorias says, this crest opens a door in the Darkwood Garden sealed by ancient magic. The door leads to the grave of Sir Artorias, the Abyss Walker. Many adventurers have left for the grave, but none have returned, for they make easy prey for the local bandits. By such dangers, the crest can do more harm than good in the hands of the uninitiated. So, this tells you, actually, 4 things. It tells you if you want to find the grave of Artorias, it's in Darkwood Garden. It tells you if you go through this door, you'll get attacked by local bandits, which is one of the covenants. And it says that with such dangers, the crest can do more harm than good in the hands of the uninitiated. So basically says, maybe try to find another path instead of going through that door because the bandits are dangerous. So at one point in the game, you might come across the Abyss and just die. And I don't remember if the game says produce the symbol of the Abyss or something like that. I don't think so. But basically, you'll go in the Abyss and you'll die and be like, I'm so stupid. And then you'll think, well, okay, that makes total sense because I can't walk in the Abyss. And then you'll read this, you'll see this item in Andre's inventory. And it'll say that it leads to the grave of Artorias, the Abyss Walker. And that's the 4th thing that I wanted to talk about is he's the Abyss Walker. So you're like, okay, well maybe if I go to the grave of the Abyss Walker, I'll find a way to go in the Abyss and be able to fight the 4 kings. So then this will naturally lead you to Darkwood Garden, where you'll try to find the grave of Artorias, the Abyss Walker. And even if you don't buy the item, you can still read the description and learn that his grave is in Darkwood Forest, and then you just have to find it. And there's 2 ways to get to it, and I'll show both ways. But I'll go through the easier way right now. Especially because now there's no risk because you're a... Well, there's a little bit of risk, but there's almost no risk because you're There's no online anymore. You're not gonna get invaded by the forest guardians. But I think otherwise, if you want to know how to get the Abyss, Ingward tells you about it because he says, I'm the protector of the seal. The seal is to seal the darkness of the and the dark rates. But because you have the Lord Vessel, that means you have to go kill the 4 kings. I understand. But if you want to get down there, well, you have to keep in mind that the Abyss is a bottomless pit, so you'll have to be careful. So therefore, you have to find the Abyss Walker ring. And I don't know if he knows where it is or not. But I believe if he doesn't know where it is, you can now at least you know what you're looking for, which is the ring of the Abyss Walker. So, or at least the secrets of Artorias. And then if you want to figure out where Artorias is, well, you can read you might have looked through Andre's inventory and seen that he has an item that directly calls the name of Artorias the Abyss Walker, and then you're like, well, if Ingward tells me about Artorias, and I see there's an item related to Artorias in... Who have I heard that name before? And then you're like, well, in Darkroot Garden, it was his ring. And Andre, the blacksmith, has an item that's named after him. So maybe I should go to Darkroot, and then you'll go to Darkroot and find his grave. Or you'll buy the thing from Andre, and you'll read the item description of Andre, and you'll directly see that his inventory is... not that his inventory, but that his items are in here. Oh my god, that was more range than I thought.
Is it not so that thou art new?
I love this cat.
Thou fared well to find me, but cometh thee not for the grave of Sir Artorias? My advice true. Forget this. The legend of Artorias art none but a fabrication. Traversing the dark. 'Tis but a fairy tale. Have thine own respect. Go not yonder knocking for nothing, I say. Well, indeed.
Nyang, nyang, nyang. I like the sounds it does in the background as she talks.
I feel some liking for thee. I'm Alvina of the Darkroot Wood. I command a clan of hunters.
Of course you like me, you're a cat. Cats love me.
Of the forest graves. What dost thou say? Wilt thou not join us? Oh, yes, I believe we would suit thee well.
I have a duty to the fair lady, so I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say yes. I can't resist cats.
Very glad. And now thou art one of us. Let us establish a covenant.
Nyang, nyang, nyang. Meow, meow.
And here taketh this ring. If thou wearest that ring, it allows for thine summoning. If mine senses reveal intruders, then I will summon thee. Fend them off, sir. I beseech only this. I shall summon others who will, by their honor, work tirelessly with thee. Thou shalt receive great reward, and whatsoever ye shall pillage will be thine own. A true agreement, not so? But thou must heed the golden rule. The clan is thine own family. To thine kinsman forever stay true. Darest not in any attempt to double-cross. Have no doubt, such wretchedness never will we tolerate.
So anyway, now I'm bros with these guys. They don't want to attack me anymore, and this guy shows up now.
I've heard all about you. I'm Shiva of the East, captain of the brigade. Let's teach you the clan basics now, as there's no time to chat in the midst of fighting. Except there is little in the form of rules, you hear. Fight and hunt as you like. Whoever's fastest gets the prey. That's the way we do it. Only, don't forget what Arvina said. Traitors aren't given a second chance, for any reason. That's about it then. Don't worry. It's a good old time, isn't it? Great to have you with us. Good hunting to you. Don't worry now. You'll be called in hunters with patience. Don't worry.
You can buy stuff from him, but I think you have to progress a little bit. So anyway, she doesn't want you to go to the grave. That will basically go to the grave. That's going to be a sin of this covenant, but you have to go to the grave for progress. But I'm not going to go right now because I get to chill with my boys, and there's something I want to show, and I can't kill the boss over there yet if I want to show what I want to show. So now that I've opened this area, I'm going to go back to the bonfire and I'm going to end it for today. I spent a lot of time just dying to dark rates, but I think that's fine. Next episode's going to be ripe for new things to see and new things to do. And I'm going to be ready for a lot of stuff. It's going to be a grand old time. I hope you come see me then. It won't be filled with as much death because I'm pretty much all ready to go pretty much. I don't think anything from this point onwards is going to give me any significant challenge because I'm no longer going to be attempting to do things that are harder than they are from my current level. I'm basically going to be progressing as normal, more or less. So it's probably not going to be too difficult anymore. Anyway, thanks for spending some time with me. I know it's a long episode this time, but you know, you don't have to watch this all in one go, obviously. And please go play some games and make sure to sometimes play games and kind of pay a little bit more attention to them when you play them. Maybe don't just mindlessly play through them. Analyze them and enjoy them and appreciate them for what they're doing.